Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Martin, and I did my research informed presentation on technology use in health and physical education. So just to highlight the issue, this educational research presentation studied technology in the field of health and physical education, as well as the impact of virtual learning in health and physical education. And through my research, I came across two main issues that are very similar to each other. The first being that teachers need more guidance and tools to help better implement technology in the classroom. And we're talking specifically about health and physical education teachers. And then two, teachers need more professional development in the virtual platform. So not only do teachers, health and physical educators need more help with implementing technology in face-to-face learning in the classroom, but also the need for more professional development in that distance learning format in the virtual platform, which we'll get into later in the presentation. So the rationale for this issue, as stated in this first paragraph, it's saying technology has become a regular component of education and has changed the learning environment for today's K through 12 student. The days of hard copy textbooks, chalkboard instruction, and paper pencil writing are slowly becoming obsolete. Therefore, educators must be able to adapt to the ever-changing landscape that is technology-infused education. The use of technology and virtual learning has never been more present than in the past year during the COVID-19 pandemic. So my rationale for this issue is that as we've evolved in education, technology has become such a huge part. We rarely go through a class or a school day, a lesson without some sort of technology use. However, in the health and physical education realm, and specifically more physical education than health, technology is something that hasn't been included as much in the face-to-face learning environment. And that's something that teachers need to start implementing a little bit more in their instruction, and which was one of the issues that I brought up in the previous slide. In my second paragraph here, more students are opting to take health and PE virtually. Therefore, health and PE teachers must be able to implement technology effectively through the virtual platform. Health and PE teachers must also adapt their face-to-face classroom setting and implement technology enriched teaching strategies, which has been proven to be difficult in the health and physical education setting. So just kind of to highlight some of this is, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic hit, where we all had to go virtual. So everybody kind of had to use technology in some form or fashion over the last year. It was a real struggle for health and physical education teachers. But since the COVID-19 pandemic, and even maybe a little bit before then, we've seen a rapid incline in the amount of students who are enrolling in online health and PE. So they're going that online virtual route to get their credits for health and PE. And I'm specifically more talking about the high school level, the 9 through 12 setting, which is what I teach in. We're seeing more and more kids take it online, either during the school year or over the summer. So I don't foresee that going away. I think it's only going to increase as we go. So teachers have to be able to effectively teach health and PE virtually just as effectively as they would face to face. And I think we're seeing some issues with that. It can be very difficult because PE, for example, I mean, it's very hands-on. It's physical education, so it's very hands-on in what you're doing, and when you're doing it distance learning virtually, it can present some challenges. So having that technology, that good grasp of technology and being able to implement it is so crucial today. And that's whether you're teaching at distance or face to face. It's something that, like I said, in that first paragraph, it's become so much more of a part of our educational culture, and it's vital. So one of the research articles that I found had an interesting quote in the results portion of that research, those research findings from Williams. It says the results indicate that students' positive perceptions in an online high school class may equal or surpass those in a traditional face-to-face format. Increasingly, youth are exhibiting enhanced capacity for online-based coursework. Physical education classes have traditionally been face-to-face, but warrant further consideration as an online platform. So that kind of reiterates the point that I was making earlier, is that more and more kids are electing to go the online virtual route, COVID-19 or not. You know, we're seeing that increase anyway. So it's crucial that physical educators, you know, consider the methods that they use to teach their courses, and obviously technology is a huge part of that. And so that, I think that leads into my next point. There were really two main themes, if you will, that I found in the educational research. So one was the student perspective, and then the other was the teacher perspective. And they were really two kind of opposite ends of the spectrum perspectives. From the student side, we saw that students really liked the online setting. They felt that it was better for their education. They felt like they got more out of it. It was they learned more. It was they got more responsive feedback from their teachers. They had more success. They were more comfortable. So it was a really positive perspective from the student side. However, from the teacher side, it was a little bit different, and health and physical educators seemed to struggle with being able to kind of follow the same guidelines and steps, so to speak, of getting through the curriculum, doing it from a distance, based learning, from that virtual based learning. So it was kind of difficult on their end. So they didn't enjoy it as much as the kids did. So there was definitely two different perspectives from the student and the teacher. And I have a couple of quotes here. Two on the student perspective. It says the online education setting was found to be statistically significantly more favorable for students in terms of feedback and responsiveness of the teacher. So students felt like their teachers were more engaging with them. They got more of that one-on-one feedback that they may otherwise not get in a face-to-face setting. So sometimes when they have that online setting, it feels like it's just one-on-one with them and the teacher. From the student's perspective, it feels that way, versus being in a class of 30, 40 kids or whatever. So that was one positive that the students took away from it. And then another one is, in distance learning environments, there's a risk of being further isolated, but some students seem to be thriving in the new circumstance. So that's kind of saying that some students may just perform better online. They may be more comfortable. And that's the platform that they prefer. You may get more out of a student when they're in that virtual online setting because they're more comfortable. They're at home. They're not in front of their peers. They have a chance to perform on their own, versus being in that face-to-face classroom setting where they may not be as comfortable with some of the material or whatever it is that they have to do. So from the student perspective, like I said, a lot of it was real positive feedback. But then you look at the teacher perspective here. One research that was done by Johnson actually earlier this year, there were 5 kind of main themes that came from the teacher's perspective, and I'll talk about those a little bit more later. But those 5 themes emerged from the data were professional development, instructional technology, distance learning pedagogy, equity issues, and the marginalization of PE. And like I said, I'll get into more of that a little bit later, but teachers discussed the need for more professional development related to educational technology and training specific to teaching PE online. The instructional technology theme discussed the need for technology related support and training specific to teaching PE online. So teachers feel like health and PE teachers feel as though they need a little bit more guidance with how to teach online PE. So they're real comfortable with doing it in the face-to-face setting because that's the way they've been doing it for years. But when you're talking about doing it online, they feel like they need more of that educational technology help, that professional development, which were the issues that I talked about in the first slide. Teachers feel like they need more of that. So that's the biggest issue, is that, yes, we know how to, do a Zoom meeting or whatever, post some stuff online, but we really need help with how to use different technologies, different methods, and then also just the flow, the pedagogy of teaching the course. It can be a little bit different when you're doing it online versus in person. There may be certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. And so health and PE teachers just feel like they need a little bit more help with that. The COVID-19 pandemic, it was sprung on them. And so there was a lot of, it seemed to be like frustration from the teacher's side. And so hopefully, I'll talk about it at the end, but hopefully we're going to be getting more towards some more aid for health and PE teachers. So how has this issue been addressed? There were several of these articles touched on that I researched. There were 6 that kind of stood out, which are the ones that I'm pulling from for this presentation. But a couple of them address the issues in different ways to make it known to the stakeholders. And this research done by Killen in 2019, it says existent technology adoption research in PE is thus limited in its availability to explain why teachers might choose to use this these online teaching methods. So I'm not going to read that whole thing, but basically what that is kind of getting at is there was a little bit of reluctancy from PE teachers to just adopt these different teaching methods using technology. And a lot of it was because they didn't know, how to do it. It talks about in that quote, the adoption of technology, computer literacy definitely was a factor in that. And that was, kind of making the teachers kind of take a step back a little bit towards using technology or the virtual platform. And so this particular research focused on it. They were semi-structured interviews. They interviewed 28 high school PE teachers just to kind of collect data on how they felt about their technology use in the classroom and virtual, health and PE in general. And that last quote at the bottom said, the results serve to situate the theory within the secondary PE context. The participants' perceptions and experiences were also contradictory to much of the current research on teachers' adoption in PE and K through 12 education more generally. So kind of what some of the research had said, there was a literature review within this article, and it was super positive and kind of supporting and saying teachers were doing a great job with it. And then the results, it was kind of contradicted that a little bit, and the PE teachers didn't feel that way. They didn't feel as though they had good experiences with implementing technology in their classroom or teaching it virtually. And so kind of going back to that point of, they need more help. So thinking that the problem had been addressed, it really, hadn't been fully addressed yet. And so when we get to the end, we talk about some possible solutions. We might be able to uncover how to address some of these issues. So, what are the implications, for policy and practice, when it comes to this issue of implementing technology and teaching online health and PE, what can we get out of it? And Killen, went on to say in that article that systematic research related to the design and the adoption and implementation of online and blended instruction in physical education is warranted. It's definitely warranted because Like I said at the beginning, more and more kids are enrolling in the online health and PE, and technology is not going away. It's only going to continue to develop and evolve over time. And so it definitely needs to be a part of what health and PE teachers are doing on a daily basis, and so in the health classroom, it's a little bit more easier because that's more of your traditional classroom setting. But in PE, it can be a little bit more difficult. And going back to those 5 themes that Johnson kind of highlighted as concerns, so to speak, that health and PE teachers had with the online and blended learning instruction. Number 1 was professional development. And so being able to, collaborate with other PE teachers and maybe take, not courses necessarily, but just, some sort of, maybe little seminars or conferences or what have you, at the beginning of the year during your pre-planning or even during the year, what are different methods, what are different ways that teachers can implement technology in the classroom, and that's where research comes in. Like that's where I think this is so important, this qualitative research and helping. That's what we're trying to do every year, every day is how can we develop our profession and continue to get better and evolve, and like I said, technology is such a huge part of that, and so it needs to be a part of the health and PE curriculum. Instructional technology, great, let's use technology in health and PE. Well, what technology do we use? That's the biggest question, is like, well, it's great to just say, hey, we need to use more technology, but specifically, what is it that we can use? And when you're talking about, online health and PE, for example, distance learning PE, give an example of 9th grade personal fitness. One type of instructional technology that can be used for 9th grade personal fitness is, and within the curriculum, there's a 1 mile run. And I'm just using this as an example, but they have to do a 1 mile run. Well, just assigning that through whatever platform that you use, and kids going out and running a mile and timing themselves, that may not quite, hit all of the standards. So maybe the use of heart monitors and a program that's going to kind of gauge not just how fast they're running the mile, but also what's their heart rate while they're doing it. There's technology that you can use for body mass index and just all sorts of different, there's weightlifting programs that are virtual and online. So there's all different kinds of tools that can be used. But teachers may not know, how either A, how to access that, or B, even how to use it. And so that's where the professional development comes in, and showing teachers these different methods, and then also showing them how to use them, showing what they are, how to use them. That's the biggest thing. That's what 1 and 2 hit on right here. Then number 3 is distance learning pedagogy. So just the methods of how you do it. I mentioned earlier, you may not be able to teach a face-to-face health and PE course the same way as you would have to teach it virtually. So what methods do you use? How's your curriculum lined up? Do you kind of have to change some things within the curriculum? What can you cover really well? What do you need a little bit more aid in? Do you have to move certain pieces around? That's definitely something that is different. Having experience teaching online health and PE, it is different, and I would approach it differently as I would doing it face to face. Your pacing may be different or what have you. So that's something that's definitely a struggle, I think, for some teachers, is kind of how to go about implementing it. Equity issues, not all of your students are going to have the same access to technology. So that's a huge issue when you're talking about virtual distance learning or implementing technology in face-to-face settings. You have to have access to these things. And so not all kids, there could be kids of different socioeconomic statuses, or they're just from different areas, different backgrounds. They may not have the same access to all of these things. So it's a huge issue. You can't have, online virtual distance learning, or you can't implement technology if every student doesn't have that equal opportunity and equal access to all of those things. So that was a concern that the teachers had. And then the last point, marginalization of PE. So a lot of the PE teachers in this study felt like that PE wasn't as important as some of the other subjects. And so there's not as much of an emphasis. One of the quotes that I had earlier said that there wasn't as much research and stuff on virtual health and PE, or technology implementation in face-to-face PE, because it's, these teachers felt like it wasn't as important as, your math and your science and English, subjects. And so they felt like that was, another issue that played into the ability to effectively teach online health and PE. So, kind of summing all this up, what are the solutions? What did the research say were the solutions to some of these issues? And so I pulled 3 quotes from these articles that I felt like really kind of hit on, some potential solutions. And just to note that there's not one specific, this is the way you have to do it, or this is the only right way. There's several different ways and several different methods that you can go about doing this. But Dom said in his article, educational leaders should direct efforts toward this educational trend to ensure that appropriate physical education learning experiences are included in all K through 12 online PE offerings. So it starts at the top, with the administrators. They need to be the leaders in helping, start and gather those professional development opportunities that we talked about earlier. How, we need to have leaders to go out and be able to find, technology methods, and then give that to the teachers, present that information to the teachers and have it easily accessible to them is the key. A quote from Beck says, the findings align with and extend to previous research that suggests technology experiences must be dynamic, authentic, and tailored for individuals at different stages of technology adoption. So, whatever it is that you use, again, it's got to be to where everyone, that it's dynamic and it's authentic to what you're doing. It's specific for health and PE. It's tailored for health and PE. There's plenty of online math websites that are and math tools that are used, but what is accessible for teachers? It has to be specific for health and PE. And so I think that's what that research, was really trying to push that point across. And then finally, I think this last quote kind of sums everything up. As I was researching, kind of summed my whole basis for my research up really well. It says future studies should seek to expand upon the knowledge base related to teachers and students' experiences in distance learning, including a more in-depth analysis of types of lessons and assessments teachers created to inform best practices. So going back to the beginning, talking about how students' perspectives of the class, of online health and PE were really positive and teachers wasn't as positive. What can we do to draw from that to make the experience of distance learning better for everybody, not just the teachers who don't, feel that it's as good, but also the students? How can we better it for the students, and how can we better it for the teachers? Make it easier on the teachers, make it more accessible, and make teachers more comfortable with using technology in the classroom. And then the in-depth analysis and types of lessons and assessments to inform best practice. What is the best way? What is the best form of technology that we can use to implement whatever it is we're trying to do within the curriculum? So I mentioned like the heart rate monitor example. Is that a best practice? It may be, it may not be. That's where this is kind of an open-ended solutions to this issue. Like I said, there's not one way to do it. There's not one correct way. But I think the biggest thing is the solution is professional development that starts at the top with your educational leaders, making it more accessible for the teachers and for the students, and making sure teachers are informed about it and they're comfortable with it. They know how to access it. They know how to use it. And they know in what methods to use it, what forms, like this is when this particular technology is good to use within the curriculum. This is where, you need to implement this or implement that. So it's kind of open-ended. And I think there's definitely more research out there that needs to be done on this. Because like I said, this is a super important and very relevant to today's educational landscape. And it is difficult. It's not easy. But I think that in ways we're headed in the right direction. It's just getting teachers comfortable with it and just simply showing them and developing them on how to use the technology. That's the solution. So there's some of my references. Again, I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I will see you guys later.